1. Hook and problem. You wake up exhausted, not because life is hard, but because your mind has been trying to control things it was never meant to control. The future, people, outcomes, time, and slowly, without realizing it, control becomes a form of fear. Most people believe anxiety comes from uncertainty, but that is not true. Anxiety comes from the desperate need for certainty in a world that has never promised it.
Yes, I agree.
A man checks his phone every 5 minutes, hoping for a reply that will calm his mind. A woman replays conversations at night, searching for the perfect explanation that could have changed the outcome. Another person plans every detail of life, only to collapse the moment reality refuses to obey. This is the modern illusion. We think control will protect us, but often, it only makes us fragile. The Stoics understood something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Peace was never found in controlling life. Peace was found in facing life without needing to control it. Before we continue, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers, where timeless wisdom meets the struggles of modern life. Because today, you may discover that the thing exhausting you most is the illusion you were taught to chase. Continue to next section. 2. Modern illusion. The modern world worships control like a religion. Everywhere you look, people are told to optimize, predict, dominate, wake up earlier, track your habits, plan 5 years ahead, build the perfect body, the perfect routine, the perfect future. And for a while, it feels powerful, because control creates the illusion that pain can be avoided. Social media deepens this illusion even more. You scroll through images of calm faces, luxury apartments, disciplined morning routines, successful relationships, and unconsciously, your mind begins to believe that strong people must have mastered life completely. No uncertainty, no confusion, no emotional chaos, only control. But behind closed doors, many of those same people are terrified. Terrified of losing status, terrified of rejection, terrified that one unexpected moment could destroy the identity they worked so hard to maintain. This is the hidden tragedy of modern ambition. People are not building lives anymore. They are building defense systems against uncertainty. A man overworks himself because he believes money will finally make him feel safe. A woman controls every detail of her relationship because she fears abandonment. Someone obsesses over self-improvement not from self-respect, but from fear of not being enough. And society applauds them for it. Because fear looks very similar to discipline when viewed from a distance. But eventually, reality interrupts the performance. A relationship changes. Health declines. A career collapses. Someone leaves without explanation. Time moves faster than expected. And suddenly, the illusion cracks. Because life was never designed to obey human plans. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Nature moves on its own terms. People act according to their own minds. Fortune changes without warning. Yet modern people still exhaust themselves trying to negotiate with uncertainty. Trying to control every opinion, every outcome, every possibility. But the more tightly you grip life, the more anxious you become when it inevitably slips through your fingers. This is why so many people feel emotionally tired even when nothing catastrophic has happened. Their nervous system is constantly fighting reality itself, trying to force permanence into a temporary world, trying to demand guarantees from a future no human being has ever controlled. And perhaps the most dangerous part of all, most people never realize the prison they are living in. Because society rewards control, even when it quietly destroys inner peace. Continue to next section. 3. Internal conflict. Adrian could not explain when the exhaustion truly began. From the outside, his life looked disciplined. He woke up early, answered emails on time, exercised consistently, planned every week with precision. People admired his control. But at night, when the apartment became silent, something inside him started to unravel. His mind refused to rest. Every conversation replayed itself repeatedly. Every decision became another possibility to analyze. Every uncertain future transformed into a threat his mind needed to solve before morning arrived. What if the company fails? What if she loses interest? What if all this effort still leads nowhere? The body sat still. But internally, he was at war with invisible futures. And the strangest part was this. He believed this constant tension was responsibility. He thought worry meant preparation. He thought overthinking meant intelligence. He thought emotional control meant suppressing fear instead of understanding it. So he kept tightening his grip on life. More schedules, more planning, more control. Yet the anxiety only deepened. Because the human mind was never designed to carry the burden of controlling existence itself. Meanwhile, Elena experienced the same conflict in a different form. She feared silence. Not because silence was empty, but because silence exposed the thoughts she spent all day trying to outrun. Whenever life slowed down, discomfort surfaced immediately. Questions she could not control. Emotions she could not predict. Loneliness she could not organize into productivity. So she filled every moment. Music in the background. Constant notifications. Work without pause. Endless scrolling before sleep. Anything to avoid sitting alone with uncertainty. But avoidance has a hidden cost. The emotions ignored during the day return louder at night. And eventually, both Adrian and Elena reached the same invisible wall many modern people encounter. The realization that no amount of control creates permanent safety. Because life keeps changing. People change. Feelings change. Circumstances change. Even identity changes over time. Yet the ego resists this truth desperately. It wants guarantees. Permanent outcomes, emotional certainty.
Hello?
And when reality refuses to provide those things,
Elena?
inner conflict begins.
I didn't think you'd
This is
answer.
why some people become emotionally exhausted without understanding why. They are fighting battles that cannot be won. Trying to freeze moving water. Trying to secure a future that does not exist yet. Trying to control the reactions, thoughts, and emotions of other human beings. The Stoics believed suffering often begins long before pain itself arrives. It begins in resistance. Resistance to change. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to the simple fact that life was never fully ours to command. And perhaps true exhaustion is not caused by hardship alone, but by the endless attempt to control what was never within our hands. Continue to next section. 4. Stoic insight. One evening, Adrian asked Aurel a question that had quietly followed him for years. How do I finally gain control over my life? Aurel looked at him for a long moment, then smiled gently. You suffer, he said, because you believe control will save you. The room became silent. Outside the window, rain moved softly against the glass. Cars passed. People hurried through the streets. Life continued without asking permission from anyone.
I don't understand.
Aurel poured tea slowly, as if there were no need to rush time itself. Then he spoke again. The Stoics never taught control over life. They taught control over the self. This was the distinction Adrian had never understood. Most people spend their lives trying to manage external reality. They try to control outcomes, control opinions, control how others behave, control whether they will be loved, respected, remembered, or abandoned. But according to Stoicism, this is the source of unnecessary suffering. Because external reality has never belonged to us. Not fully. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet still lost people he loved. Epictetus lived as a slave and still discovered inner freedom. The Stoics understood something modern society constantly forgets. Peace does not come from controlling events. It comes from mastering your response to them. Aurel explained that life can be divided into two worlds. The first world is internal. Your judgments, your actions, your values, your discipline, your ability to remain calm in difficulty. This world belongs to you. The second world is external. Other people's opinions, the future, luck, time, outcomes, loss, change. This world never truly belonged to you. Yet most human anxiety is created by confusing the two. People abandon inner stability while chasing external certainty. And the more uncertain life becomes, the more violently the mind tries to regain control. But Stoicism asks a different question entirely. What if peace was never meant to come from certainty? What if strength is the ability to walk calmly through uncertainty itself? Adrian sat quietly. For the first time, he realized how much energy he had wasted trying to force life into predictable shapes. Trying to guarantee love, guarantee success, guarantee permanence. But reality had always moved like water through his hands. Aurel leaned forward slightly. To let go, he said softly, is not weakness. It is trust. Not trust that life will always be easy. Not trust that pain will never come. But trust that you can face whatever arrives without losing yourself. This is the Stoic shift. You stop asking, how do I control life? And begin asking, how do I remain steady when life cannot be controlled? Because eventually, every human being learns the same truth. Control is temporary. Character is enduring. And the moment you stop demanding certainty from the world, your mind finally begins to breathe. Continue to next section. 5. Reversal. For most of his life, Adrian believed strength meant staying in control. Control your emotions. Control your image. Control your future. Never appear uncertain. Never appear weak. And like many people, he confused tension with strength. The tighter he held himself together, the more disciplined he believed he had become. But one morning, after another sleepless night, something inside him finally broke. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly. He sat alone before sunrise, staring at the city lights fading into gray morning skies, and realized something terrifying. Despite all his effort, he still felt afraid. Afraid of losing what he built. Afraid of disappointing others. Afraid that life could change at any moment without his permission. And for the first time, he asked himself an honest question. If control truly creates peace, why am I still suffering? That question changed everything. Because the Stoic path begins the moment illusion becomes impossible to ignore. Aurelius later told him something he would never forget. The desire for absolute control is often the deepest form of fear. Not wisdom. Not intelligence. Fear. Fear disguised as perfectionism. Fear disguised as productivity. Fear disguised as emotional self-protection. People cling tightly because they believe letting go means collapse. But Stoicism reveals the opposite. The person obsessed with controlling life is fragile. Because their peace depends on conditions remaining stable. And life has never been stable. True strength belongs to the person who can remain grounded even when circumstances shift unexpectedly. The one who survives rejection without losing dignity. The one who faces uncertainty without panic. The one who adapts instead of resisting reality. This is the reversal modern society rarely understands. Control does not create inner power. Adaptability does. The oak tree appears powerful until the storm arrives. It resists violently, refusing to bend. Meanwhile, the bamboo survives because it moves with the wind. Stoicism teaches human beings to become like the bamboo. Flexible without surrendering values. Calm without becoming passive. Strong without needing dominance. Adrian slowly began changing small things. He stopped rehearsing conversations before they happened. Stopped demanding immediate answers from people. Stopped trying to predict every possible future before taking action. And strangely, the less he tried to control everything, the lighter his mind became. Not because uncertainty disappeared, but because he no longer treated uncertainty as an enemy. That was the transformation. He realized peace was never hidden inside perfect outcomes. Peace was hidden inside his relationship with outcomes. The Stoics never promised a controllable life. They promised something far more valuable. The ability to remain internally free in a world that constantly changes. And perhaps this is what most people misunderstand about letting go. Letting go is not giving up on life. It is giving up the illusion that fear can be defeated through control. Because eventually, every human being reaches the same conclusion. You cannot control the storm. But you can learn how not to drown inside it. Continue to next section. 6. Practical application. Understanding Stoicism intellectually is easy. Living it is difficult. Because the human mind naturally reaches for control whenever it feels afraid. The moment uncertainty appears, the mind immediately begins searching for guarantees. A guaranteed answer. A guaranteed outcome. A guaranteed future. But the Stoics practiced something radically different. They trained themselves to return attention only to what was truly within their power. Not perfectly. Daily. Aurelius told Adrian to begin with one simple habit. Pause. Before reacting. Before assuming. Before trying to force reality into the shape he preferred. Because most suffering is amplified not by events themselves, but by unconscious reactions to them. When someone ignores your message, notice the story your mind creates immediately. When plans fail, observe how quickly frustration appears. When uncertainty arrives, watch the instinct to panic and regain control. Then ask, what part of this actually belongs to me? Usually, far less than you think. You cannot control whether someone loves you, but you can control whether you betray your dignity chasing validation. You cannot control the future, but you can control the quality of your actions today. You cannot control how people perceive you, but you can control whether your character remains honest under pressure. This shift changes everything, because energy stops leaking into imaginary battles. Another Stoic practice Aurelius taught was voluntary acceptance. Not passive surrender. Not weakness. Acceptance means seeing reality clearly before deciding how to respond. If pain arrives, acknowledge it. If change comes, face it. If uncertainty remains unresolved, stop demanding immediate certainty from life. Most people exhaust themselves arguing with reality internally. This should not be happening. They should not act this way. My life should be different by now. But reality does not negotiate with personal expectations. And suffering deepens when the mind refuses to accept what already exists. Stoicism teaches: see clearly first. Respond wisely second. Adrian also learned to reduce unnecessary mental noise. Less compulsive checking. Less over-explaining. Less emotional dependence on outcomes. He began taking walks without headphones. Sitting quietly without distraction. Allowing uncomfortable thoughts to rise without immediately escaping them. At first, the silence felt unbearable. Then gradually, something changed. His mind became less reactive, less desperate, less afraid of uncertainty itself. Because resilience grows when avoidance ends. The Stoics believed inner stability is built through repeated exposure to reality, not escape from it. And perhaps the most practical lesson of all is this: stop measuring peace by how controlled your life appears externally. Measure it by how calm you remain internally when control disappears. Because anyone can feel stable when life obeys them. But true character reveals itself when life does not. And in those moments, Stoicism asks you to remember something simple. You do not need certainty to move forward. You only need the courage to face uncertainty without abandoning yourself. Continue to next section. 7. Final impact. One day, life will interrupt your plans. Not because you failed. Not because you were weak. But because uncertainty has always been part of being human. And in that moment, the question will no longer be, how do I control everything? The real question will be, can I remain calm when I cannot? This is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes freedom. Because the person who needs certainty to feel peace will always fear change. But the person who trusts their own character can walk through uncertainty without collapsing. Adrian finally understood this. The future remained unknown. People remained unpredictable. Life remained imperfect. But his mind no longer fought reality every waking moment. And strangely, that was the first time he truly felt free. Not because life became easier, but because he stopped demanding that it obey him. Control fades. Status fades. Outcomes fade. But character remains. And perhaps true peace begins the moment you stop gripping life so tightly. And learn how to stand calmly within its uncertainty. If this reflection resonated with you, continue the practice tomorrow. Comment below. What is one thing you are finally learning to let go of? And subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers for more timeless reflections on strength, clarity, and inner freedom.